All right, so we're diving deep today, folks, into the world of performance and specifically poetry slam. But get this, we're not talking about your typical self-expression feel-good stuff.
Yeah, you could say that. Our source material is, well, a little intense, to say the least.
It really is. We're looking at excerpts from Mastering the Stage, Truth and Deception, and let me tell you, the title is spot on. It's got this really cynical, dark view of humanity.
Hmm.
Like, almost like it's saying, hey, the world is a messed up place, so use that to your advantage when you're on stage.
Yeah, no kidding. It just throws a Voltaire quote at you right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Man is by nature a terrible beast, held in chains only by civilization. And then it goes on to compare life to dancing on a burning pile of shit. Pretty dramatic, right?
Talks about setting the stage right. It's not your average motivational speaker, that's for sure. But here's the thing. It's not just trying to be shocking, right? There's actually a pretty interesting argument behind all the darkness.
Right. The source is saying we're all inherently flawed, driven by these primal urges that society's rules are barely keeping in check. And suppressing our true nature, it creates this huge internal conflict that can be super destructive.
Yeah, there's this one line that really stuck with me. You are the product of everything you reject. Like, by denying our darker impulses, we're actually making them stronger.
Exactly. And that's where performance comes in. The source argues that we can actually use this tension, this hidden truth about human nature, to create something really captivating on stage.
Okay, so how do we go from this cynical view of humanity to actually setting the stage on fire? What's the secret weapon here?
Well, that's where the double meaning trick comes in.
All right, you've got my attention.
Yeah.
What's this double meaning magic all about?
Think of it like a story with two sides. On the surface, it might seem straightforward, maybe even hopeful, but underneath, there's this darker, cynical truth waiting to be revealed.
So you're setting up the audience to think they're getting one thing, and then boom, you hit it with a twist.
Exactly. And that twist comes from the double meaning woven into your story. Maybe it's clever wordplay, maybe it's a subtle shift in perspective. You can even present the whole story in reverse, and it reveals this totally different interpretation. The point is to create this feeling of unease, like, wait a minute, things aren't always what they seem.
I can see how that would be so powerful in performance, especially for something like poetry slam,
Yeah.
where you're trying to connect with the audience on this raw, emotional level.
Absolutely. The source talks about how this technique allows you to become the king of the game, to make the audience dance in your hell. It's all about controlling the narrative, using your words to really manipulate emotions and just create an unforgettable experience.
Okay, sounds a little intense, but I'm definitely intrigued. Does the source give any specific examples of how this double meaning trick actually works, in practice?
It does. There's this example about a woman who, at first glance, seems to represent hope. But when you look closer, she actually becomes a symbol of lost hope. It's this really brilliant inversion that completely changes the meaning of the whole story.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I can see how that would really mess with an audience's expectations and in a good way.
Right. It's all about playing with those expectations. You're leading them down one path, then pulling the rug out from under them. It makes them think, it makes them feel something, and it definitely keeps them on the edge of their seats.
And the source also talks about how this plays into stage presence too, right? Like
Right.
using pauses, using silence to really heighten that suspense.
Exactly. It even goes into detail about how to deliver those key lines. Those moments where the double meaning hits. It's about controlling the rhythm, the tone, even the energy of the performance. You really maximize the impact that way.
Yeah, starting to see why they call this mastering the stage, truth and deception. It's not just about telling a story, it's about crafting an entire experience. Using language as a tool to control the narrative and ultimately control the audience's reaction.
You got it. It's about understanding the power of words and how to use them strategically to achieve a specific effect.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the double meaning trick, but can we break it down a bit more? What makes it so effective?
Well, one key element is contrast. It's like you're setting up these opposing forces, right? Hope and despair, light and darkness, truth and deception, and then you weave them together. You create this tension, this intrigue that really pulls people in.
So you're basically creating this puzzle for the audience to solve.
Yeah, in a way, you're giving them pieces of information that seem to contradict each other, and it's up to them to figure out what it all means. That process of discovery, that's what keeps them engaged.
Right. So it's not just passively listening to a story.
Yeah.
You're actively trying to decipher the message, right?
Hmm?
Trying to unravel all those layers of meaning.
Exactly. That active engagement is what makes this technique so powerful. The audience has to think critically, to question their own assumptions and ultimately confront some uncomfortable truths about themselves and the world around them.
That's heavy stuff. All right, so we've got contrast, we've got the element of surprise. What else makes this technique so effective?
Well, I think the source really nails it when it talks about using the double meaning trick to tap into that darker side of human nature.
Oh yeah, we talked about how the source has this pretty bleak view of humanity,
Yeah.
but it's not just being cynical for no reason. Like, it's actually using that cynicism to create something powerful.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we're all drawn to stories that challenge us, that make us confront uncomfortable truths. And this trick, it gives performers a way to tap into that instinct to create art that's unsettling but also really captivating.
So it's not about avoiding the darkness, it's about embracing it and then using it to create something meaningful.
Exactly. Truth, even when it's uncomfortable, has this power and beauty that can be incredibly compelling, especially on stage.
This is all really fascinating stuff, and I'm seeing how it would be effective in performance. But before we go full on dark side, I think it's important to address the ethical considerations here.
Absolutely. Using these techniques comes with responsibility, something we'll definitely dive into in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back with more on truth, deception, and the art of setting the stage on fire.
You know, it's really fascinating how this source connects performance to like something really fundamental about human nature.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we're all drawn to stories, right? To narratives that help us make sense of the world. And the stories that really grab us, the ones that we remember, they're usually the ones that challenge us, the ones that make us question what we thought we knew.
Right, like when you're watching a movie and there's a plot twist. You never saw it coming.
Yeah.
Suddenly, everything you thought you understood is like totally flipped on its head.
Exactly. And that's what the double meaning trick is all about. It's like recreating that feeling on stage, using language and performance to craft a story that unfolds in these unexpected ways.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that works. But how does this trick, like, actually play out in a performance? Can we go back to the source material for a minute?
Sure, let's go back to that example we were talking about earlier, the one with the woman who's both hope and loss. Remember that?
Yeah, that one was intense. I mean, the image of light turning into fire, it was beautiful, but also really unsettling.
Yeah, exactly. That's the power of imagery and contrast. The source says you start with an image that seems really positive, something that makes people feel warmth and hope, like maybe a loving gaze or a promise of better days.
So you're kind of lulling the audience into a false sense of security, making them think they're getting this nice, feel-good story.
Right. You're establishing trust. You want them to buy into the world you're creating. But then you hit them with a twist.
Yeah, the rug pull moment.
Exactly. So suddenly that glow that they thought was hope, it's actually the light of a fire that consumes everything. And the woman who represented hope, well, she becomes a symbol of loss and disillusionment.
Whoa, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you're hitting them with this truth bomb, but you're doing it in a way that's, like, poetic.
Great. And the contrast, that's what creates the impact. It forces the audience to go back and rethink everything they just heard. They thought they were getting one thing, but then they're confronted with this harsh reality.
I can see how this would be so effective in poetry slam.
Yeah.
You've got the emotion, the rhythm of the words, and then on top of that, you've got this whole other layer of meaning. It's like a puzzle for the audience to figure out.
Yeah, you're right. And the source even talks about how to deliver these lines to really drive the point home. It's about using pauses, letting the silence hang there for a minute to create that suspense, then boom, you hit them with the truth.
Like that example from the source, right? Where the performer is talking about the woman who was the hope that kept him alive.
Yeah.
And then there's this pause. And then he reveals that she was actually the hope he had to leave behind.
Yes. That pause, it's crucial. It gives the audience a moment to take it all in, to make their own assumptions, and then bam, the truth hits them.
Talk about a mic drop moment.
Exactly. And the source is very specific about the effect you want to create. You want to shake them, to break them with your truth. It's about using language to shatter complacency and make them confront reality.
You know, I can see how some people might think this is a little manipulative, like focusing too much on shock value. What would you say to that?
Well, it's a valid point. It's important to remember that the goal isn't to just be shocking. It's about using those elements of surprise and subversion to create a deeper impact, to get the audience thinking and engaging with the material in a different way.
So it's not about being dark or cynical just for the sake of it. It's about using those things strategically to highlight a certain truth or perspective.
Exactly. It's about making the audience question things, challenging their assumptions. And hopefully they walk away with something to think about long after the performance is over.
It's interesting how the source material, even though it's advocating for this, kind of ruthless approach, it also really emphasizes the importance of truth. It's not about sugarcoating things or pretending everything is fine. It's about confronting the darkness, both within ourselves and in the world, and then using that as fuel for creativity.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It's about understanding that truth, even when it's hard to face, has a power that can't be denied.
And by tapping into that power, performers can create an experience that's both challenging and really transformative for the audience.
Right. It's about creating a dialogue, getting people thinking, and hopefully leaving them with a deeper understanding of themselves and the world.
This has been a really great deep dive. It's really made me think about storytelling in a whole new way. But before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about something else the source mentions. The connection between mastering the stage and mastering, life in general.
Ah, yeah. That's a really important point. The source doesn't just focus on performance. It suggests that these same principles, using truth and deception, captivating an audience, can be applied to all sorts of things in our lives.
So it's about more than just putting on a good show. It's about using these techniques to achieve our goals, to influence others, to make a real impact on the world.
Exactly. It's about understanding persuasion, the art of telling a story that people want to hear. And it's about owning your truth, even if it's different or controversial.
That's a really powerful message. It's like we're all performers on the stage of life, right? And if we can master the art of storytelling, we can shape our own destinies.
You got it. We have the power to choose our roles, to write our own stories, and we can use our voices to create the change we want to see.
This has been an incredible conversation, but I think we need to talk about the potential downsides too. The line between persuasion and manipulation, it can be pretty blurry.
You're absolutely right, and that's a discussion we need to have. Join us for the final part of our deep dive as we explore the ethical side of using these techniques. How can we make sure we're not, using our powers for evil?
So we've really gone deep with this mastering the stage thing, and it's given us a lot to think about. But, before we all run off and become master manipulators or something, we should probably talk about the ethics of all of this.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, the source material is pretty bold, right? All that
Right.
talk about owning the stage, making the audience dance in your hell. And we've seen how these techniques can really get to people. They can shake them up, challenge their beliefs, even make them question reality.
It's almost like having a superpower, right? Being able to use words with that kind of impact. But you know what they say? Great power, great responsibility.
Totally. And that's where ethics come in. When we start talking about truth and deception, controlling a narrative, messing with people's emotions even, we have to be super careful.
Yeah, because that line between persuasion and manipulation, it can be really thin. And it's so easy to cross it without even realizing it. Like instead of just communicating honestly, we start using our words as weapons.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, and we have to be really aware of that. I think we need to constantly be checking ourselves, like, okay, what are my intentions here? Am I trying to empower people, or am I just trying to get what I want?
Right, that's the big question, isn't it?
Awesome.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of it all. Like, oh, look, I crafted this super powerful performance and the audience is reacting exactly how I wanted, but we can't lose sight of the bigger picture here.
Now, the source does kind of touch on this whole responsibility thing. It encourages performers to, and I'm paraphrasing here, to use their power on stage, not at the bar. It's subtle, but it shows that they're at least aware that these techniques, they should be used in the right context.
Right. Yeah. It's like the difference between a magician doing their thing on stage and then, a con artist using tricks to steal people's money. The context is everything.
Exactly. And that's why being transparent with the audience is so crucial. Like, let them know that you're going to be playing with their perceptions, you're going to challenge them, give them the choice to opt in.
Yeah. Respect their right to decide how they want to experience it.
Right. And be mindful of the impact your words are having. Like, are we adding to all this cynicism and distrust out there? Or are we using our voices to actually promote understanding and empathy?
That's a good point.
Uh-huh.
It really all comes down to our own ethics, our values. Are we using our skills for good, or are we using them to kind of mess people up?
It is kind of amazing when you think about it. We started this deep dive looking at this source that seemed to be all about this this ruthless approach to performance. And here we are talking about ethics and communication and our responsibility to use our words carefully.
Yeah, it just shows you never know where these deep dives will lead us, right?
Yeah.
But I think this one has given us all a lot to think about. I know it's made me think about how I communicate, the stories I tell, the impact I want to have.
Me too. And honestly, I think that's the most valuable thing we can take away from this. It's not just about mastering a bunch of techniques, it's about using them in the right way, with integrity, with a purpose.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening who wants to explore these ideas further, we highly recommend checking out Poetry Master by Posey Craft in Seven and Tagan. It's a great resource.
Be creative, everyone.
And that's our show for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of performance, truth, and the power of language. We hope you've enjoyed the ride, and we'll see you next time.